Okay, let's go ahead and start our public sign-up clock going while the presentation is being made. And we have, who's going to make the presentation?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm Mark Helmbrecht, your Transportation Manager. And my presentation is to inform the Council about the community input received on public access improvement options in the State Route 37 corridor to be prepared in order to mitigate any impacts from any future State Route 37 improvement projects. This presentation was originally scheduled for December, and in the interim, Caltrans released a draft environmental impact report for State Route 37 between Mare Island and State Route 121. My presentation tonight is not about that environmental report and the corridor projects in that report. City staff are currently reviewing the draft EIR and will provide comments to Caltrans prior to the public comment period closing on February 28th. Next slide, please. The 37 highway has many, concerning issues, including, it's congested. We have a lot of highway capacity is limited. Incident response is difficult. There's flooding, heavy storms, and breaching of the old levees. Floods the highway. Sea level rise is going to make that worse. There's also a lack of transportation alternatives. There's no transit on the corridor, and walking and biking happen in the actual highway shoulder. And then you have sensitive land uses surrounding the corridor. Next slide, please. Caltrans and MTC have initiated several planning and environmental impact analysis efforts looking at projects throughout the corridor to address issues identified early on the slide. This map on this slide shows the overall corridor. Segment A in purple is from US 101 in Novato to State Route 121 at Sears Point. Efforts in this segment are looking at options which raise the highway and or move it out of the floodplain. Segment B in blue is from Sears Point to Mare Island. Improvements in this segment are more focused on expanding capacity. Segment C in green is in Vallejo from Mare Island to I-80, and efforts are focused on operational improvements and improved interface with local streets, like a new interchange at Fairgrounds Drive. Any future improvements in this corridor will be a heavily collaborated effort with agencies from Napa, Sonoma, Marin, and Solano counties, including the regional agencies and the state agencies like Caltrans and MTC. Next slide, please. The State Route 37 corridor provides public access to recreation and open space sites throughout that corridor. Each of the construction projects along the existing corridor will change conditions and likely impact that public access. These impacts will need to be mitigated. Potential public access sites and amenities were previously identified by Solano County Transportation Authority and the City of Vallejo staff. The sites shown on the map on this slide include a Mare Island Educational Center, improvements at White Slough, and several water trail sites along the riverfront and bay. Water trail sites would provide access to outdoor recreational uses such as fishing, non-motorized boating such as launching kayaks and canoes, sightseeing, and picnicking. Public Works wanted to engage the community and gather feedback on these public access mitigation ideas and see whether the community had additional ideas. Next slide, please. Working with our Public Information Office, we initiated a public engagement effort outreaching to neighborhoods, churches, and social networks in the city. Flyers in English, Spanish, and Tagalog were distributed, calling people's attention to our online survey, which was promoted in press releases, city newsletter, webpage, community outreach events, and the Florence community outreach events at the Florence Douglass Center, Farmers Market, and a pop-up on the waterfront shown in the photos here. Overall, 280 residents participated in the process and represent a broad cross-section of the community. Next slide, please. The slide shows some of the findings. Our survey provided background in the State Route 37 corridor planning, the projects that are potential, and the impacts of those projects. We provided descriptions of the possible public access opportunities and invited residents to suggest additional ideas. We also asked which kinds of amenities at these sites were important and collected demographic information to see whether our data was representative of the community. The top 3 identified public access sites, Mare Island Education Center, Vallejo Marina Water Trail Site, and Wilson Avenue Water Trail sites are highlighted here as the top public access opportunities in terms of input from the public. Next slide. In addition to the sites, the public identified amenities that were important at these sites for them to enjoy them. The top responses, bathrooms, parking, and obviously access to the water were important to people. In addition, items that the public brought up separately were about safety and trash cans and having water fountains available were listed in sort of our other category, inviting other input. Next slide, please. Tonight, just hit on a few of the highlights of the effort and the results. The full report will be posted shortly to the city website. The full report includes results broken out by key zip codes and a summation of the public comments received, which include major themes. Very much interested from the public in widening the highway to address the congestion. Public access sites that are developed as mitigation must be safe. Public safety showed up a lot in the comments from the survey. And then support for transportation alternatives, transit and biking and walking options in the corridor, in addition to vehicle access and parking, show up in the survey results as well. Next slide, please. As we said, the full report will be on the website, and we're happy to provide it to council. I'm happy to take questions, and Terrence was involved as well.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go to council questions. Any? Yes, Councilmember Ariola.
Thank you, Mayor and Mr. Helmbrecht. I missed the first portion. I had to take a wee break. And so how is this project being funded? I missed that part.
I'm sorry, funded?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I know this is an ongoing project, but I mean, and this is just an update, correct?
Yes. And it's simply an outreach effort. It was funded by Public Works out of our operating budget, under $5,000.
Okay. All right. Got you. Thank you.
Any questions from council people? We'll go to the public comments, closed public comment sign up time period. Do we have any speakers on this issue?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have 2 speakers. Paul Thies, go ahead.
Naveed, do we have any public speakers?
Yes.
Okay, how many?
Oh, yes, Mr. Mayor, we have 2 speakers. Paul Thies. We have 2 speakers.
Oh, that's okay. We'll call those 2 speakers, 3 minutes each, please.
Paul Thies, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, and members of the council, my name is the Reverend Paul Thies. I live at 151 Hill Drive in Vallejo Heights. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this matter after a busy evening. My comment is about means testing, a low-income discount for any tolls to be levied on Highway 37. I respectfully ask that you send letters to Caltrans, the Metropolitan Transit Commission, and the Solano County Transportation Authority before February 28th, supporting means testing for tolls. I also ask for similar letters to our state and federal legislators, the supervisors, and neighboring city councils. My request relates to the city's legislative priorities just adopted this evening of human rights and transportation. New tolls will almost certainly be necessary if Highway 37 is widened and raised before it floods out due to sea level rise. Lower income people have already been excluded from Sonoma County, the birthplace of NIMBY, and from Marin, the most segregated county in the Bay Area, by their exclusionary zoning practices. Yet those same counties need low-income workers from Vallejo. Tolls are a regressive tax on the poor. Making 37 a toll road adds insult to injury. 70% of Solano County residents voted against the current round of bridge toll increases. Means testing for tolls is already included in Caltrans' draft environmental impact report, although the report opens a loophole by saying that no adjacent census tracts are low income. It can say this because the project boundary stops at Mare Island. And this is the key point. Toll legislation will have to be passed by the state legislature. As you probably know, in Sacramento, things often get changed at the last minute, especially on legislation that helps low-income people. Clipper cards already offer discounts for low-income people. Means testing for tolls is used in other parts of the country. We should make it crystal clear that Vallejo will not put up with tolls on 37 unless our low-income workers get a break. Vallejo needs the rest of Solano County to stand with us on this issue. The comment period for Caltrans ends February 28th. I am willing to help draft the necessary letters for your approval. Thank you for considering my views.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on to our second speaker, please.
David Haldane, go ahead.
Good evening, Council. I'll be quick. Thank you, Mark Helmbrecht, for your great presentation. It does show thought, and I appreciate your efforts to outreach to the community. Some missing points that I'd like to see covered in there that have been mentioned by neighbors in the Bay Terrace neighborhood especially, as well as some people on Mare Island, are dust mitigation for the project, making sure that we will be preserving air quality and not damaging people's cars during construction. So there's a dust mitigation plan in place. I would recommend the Public Works Department, especially with their new landscaping inspector, that they engage in defensive landscaping to prepare for salt infiltration into our land, as well as to prevent any erosion from construction happening. The construction will certainly be disrupting the habitats of the animals in the area, and I would recommend getting in touch with animal control and preparing for the influx of wildlife that will be coming into the nearby neighborhoods in both the Bay Terrace and Mare Island neighborhoods. Another thing is that people use this area as their home. This is where they sleep, eat, defecate, and wash. And these people will be displaced by this project. It would be nice if we could arrange somewhere for them to go. It may still be outside, but if we could arrange for them to have somewhere to go, these people will certainly be displaced by this project, regardless of whether they're currently occupying it legally or not. And the last thing I would ask is that you increase some of the seating at bus stops. This will definitely be increasing the weights on buses and the weights for buses as we have this disruption to our infrastructure. I already see people who should not be standing at bus stops standing for extended periods of time, and it would be nice to get some benches in there for them to sit and not be standing with a cane at a bus stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Helmbrecht, do you have any response in reply to any of those concerns that the two speakers touched on?
Sure. As noted, the draft environmental impact report does address means-based tolling. It does, as the speaker noted, somewhat defer the issue and tying it to the legislative action needed to approve the tolling. And I would agree with him that that's where that decision is going to be made. So it is in the report, and from an environmental impact standpoint, it's probably not going to have any environmental impact whether there's means-based tolling or not, as long as there's tolling. So the real focus ought to be on the legislative effort around that. I'm not sure there was a question so much in the second comment as opposed to direct input on the project.
And well, thank you very much. Let me just follow that up because I'm the representative to the Solano Transit Authority, and we also sit on the Solano Soul Trans. this subject matter is covered not only with Solano Transit, but with the Highway 37 Policy Committee, on which I also sit. I'm pretty certain that means testing will be incorporated into this process. It seems to be a consensus among not only the people who are from Solano Transit, but also from the counties that work on this project, including Marin, Napa, and Sonoma County. Means testing can become very complicated. We use it in the federal courts and it runs 12 pages. It can get quite involved. Any of the comments that were made with respect to animals, with dust, with everything else, well, that's what the environmental impact report is for. You have until February 28th in which to make those questions, present them to the drafters of that. If you put a question in, then they must respond to it. So if you want that information, make the request. As the Reverend indicated, should be done. But this project is moving and is picking up speed as we speak. It's probably going to start accelerating most rapidly if the federal government does fund some of the local transportation and water projects that Highway 37 alteration also touches on. So stay tuned. It's going to get more involved and more complex, folks. Okay, any other comments, questions, concerns by council? Councilmember Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. As you saw, I sent an email, Pastor Thies, who I know very well. He urged me to support the means testing, and so I sent that email to you yesterday. And I appreciate his comments tonight, which were very eye-opening. So I think with electronic toll taking, means testing can actually be implemented a little bit easier. And so I think whether or not it's complicated, I don't think that's a good reason I don't think that's a good reason not to support it. It's frustrating. I think we all know that the round 3 of bridge tolls didn't succeed here. It's very regressive, and a lot of the projects are happening in the South Bay or for BART, which we can't even ride from our city. So, and every single bridge, every single route going to San Francisco and to the South Bay, we have to pay a toll. And so this will only be able to go to Napa without tolls if this road is a toll road without means testing. So I think it's really important. I just think it'll help our community embrace this project. And I appreciate that access to water, which our community has really asked for repeatedly, for kayaks especially, and that kind of water recreation. So I appreciate that that's highlighted in this report. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other comments?